Imagine a turquoise lagoon, a sprawling paradise in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This is Ulithi Atoll, a place so vast you could fit hundreds of ships inside its protective coral ring. By late 1944, this wasn't just a tropical paradise. It was the beating heart of the American war effort in the Pacific. It was the largest and most active naval anchorage in the world, a bustling floating city of steel that served as the primary staging area for the U.S. Navy's push towards Japan. For the American sailors, it was a brief respite from the horrors of combat, a place to refuel, rearm, and repair. But this sanctuary, this vital logistical hub, was about to become a target. As the Allies advanced, Japan grew increasingly desperate. They unleashed a terrifying new weapon, one born from a sense of duty and sacrifice that was difficult for the West to comprehend: the kamikaze. These divine wind pilots were tasked with a single, final mission: to crash their explosive-laden aircraft directly into enemy warships. It was a tactic designed to trade one pilot and one plane for a priceless aircraft carrier or a battleship, and they had their sights set on the biggest target of all, Ulithi. The first major kamikaze attack on Ulithi came on November 20, 1944. It wasn't a massive wave but a small clandestine operation. Two Japanese planes, flying low and fast, slipped through the American defenses under the cover of twilight. The thousands of sailors on the ships below were just settling in for the evening, feeling a false sense of security within their impenetrable lagoon. Suddenly the sky erupted. Anti-aircraft guns roared to life, tracers stitching fiery patterns across the darkening sky. One of the attackers was shot down, but the other found its mark. The target was the fleet oiler, the USS Mississippi. It was a massive vessel, fully loaded with hundreds of thousands of gallons of aviation gasoline and fuel oil afloating. Bomb waiting for a spark, the kamikaze slammed into its side, and the result was instantaneous and cataclysmic. A colossal explosion ripped the ship apart, sending a mushroom cloud of fire and smoke thousands of feet into the air. The inferno was so intense it lit up the entire atoll, turning night into a horrifying fiery day. The Mississippi burned for hours before finally succumbing to its wounds and sinking to the bottom of the lagoon, taking 63 brave sailors with it. The attack was a brutal wake-up call. The sanctuary had been violated. Ulithi was no longer safe. The psychological impact was immense. If the Japanese could strike here, in the heart of their most secure base, they could strike anywhere. The U.S. Navy immediately ramped up its defenses. More anti-aircraft batteries were installed. On the surrounding islands, radar picket ships patrolled the outer perimeter, and combat air patrols were constantly in the sky. The mood at Ulithi shifted from relaxed confidence to a state of constant, nervous vigilance, but the Japanese weren't finished. Their next major attempt was even more audacious. A long-range mission codenamed Operation Tan No. 2, planned for March 11, 1945. This time they would use specialized long-range bombers, flying a one-way trip of nearly 1,500 miles from southern Japan. Their primary target was the crown jewels of the U.S. fleet, the aircraft carriers. The pilots were veterans, hand-picked for this critical mission. Their goal was to cripple the American carrier force just as it was preparing for the invasion of Okinawa. This time the Americans were ready. Radar picked up the incoming Japanese planes. Doctrine of divine wind pilots was an act of final, desperate defiance. The Japanese planes, a squadron of Yokosuka P-1Y Francis twin-engine bombers, flew a grueling, one-way mission. They were stripped of all non-essential equipment to maximize their fuel and bomb load. Their target was the heart of American naval power. As the attackers approached Ulithi, the American defenses erupted. Radar had given them a warning, and the sky was thick with anti-aircraft fire. The night was ripped apart by the flashes of guns and the crisscrossing lines of tracer rounds. Many of the Japanese bombers were hit and destroyed before they could even see the lagoon. But in the chaos and confusion of the night battle, two managed to break through the defensive screen. One of the pilots, Lieutenant Tsuru Tsutomu, spotted the dark silhouette of an aircraft carrier against the moonlit water. It was the USS Randolph, one of the new, powerful Essex-class carriers. He put his bomber into a steep dive. Alarms blared across the Randolph as the plane screamed down from the heavens. Sailors scrambled, but there was no time. The kamikaze slammed into the carrier's stern on the flight deck, right near the aft aircraft elevators. The explosion was devastating. The deck was torn open and fires immediately broke out, feeding on aviation fuel and ammunition. The blast and the resulting inferno killed 27 sailors and wounded over 100 more. The Randolph was grievously wounded, its flight deck a mangled wreck of twisted steel. The ship was knocked out of action, forced to return to the United States for extensive repairs, and would miss the critical opening stages of the Okinawa campaign. The second plane that broke through the defenses targeted another carrier, but in a stroke of luck for the Americans, it missed its primary target and crashed harmlessly into a small, unoccupied island at the edge of the atoll. Despite the Randolph being hit, the attack was largely a failure for the Japanese. They had sacrificed an entire squadron of elite pilots and advanced bombers for damage to a single carrier. However, the raids on Ulithi highlighted the extreme vulnerability of these massive, concentrated fleet anchorages. It demonstrated the terrifying effectiveness and psychological power of the kamikaze. These attacks forced the U.S. Navy to rethink its defensive strategies, leading to the development of the Big Blue Blanket, a constant, multi-layered combat air patrol that screened the fleet at all times. Ulithi, the once peaceful paradise, had been transformed into a fortress, a symbol of the Pacific War's brutal, grinding reality. The wrecks, like that of the USS Mississiniua, still rest on the lagoon floor today, a silent, underwater memorial to the men who fought and died in this forgotten corner of the war. The story of the kamikaze raids on Ulithi is a powerful reminder that in World War II, there was no safe harbor, no true rear area. The front lines could appear anywhere, at any time, even in the most idyllic of settings. It was a testament to the desperation of one side and the resolve of the other, played out over a turquoise lagoon thousands of miles from home. Thank you so much for watching. The history of the Pacific War is filled with these incredible and often overlooked stories. If you found this chapter of history as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the past. Let me know in the comments what other battles or events you'd like to see covered. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.